Welcome to Qubit Confidential, a new podcast that takes a behind-the-scenes look at the quantum world. I ask experts to share their insight on how quantum technologies are reshaping everything from computing to cryptography and beyond. My guest today is Zulfi Alam. He's Corporate Vice President of Quantum at Microsoft. Welcome, Zulfi, and thanks for joining me.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to be speaking with you. I always like to begin at the beginning, right? I mean, everyone has come into quantum from a different place, different direction, different backgrounds, I find, which is fascinating. Can you share a bit about your personal journey at Microsoft, as well as how you got involved in quantum computing?
Thank you for the question. My journey at Microsoft started about 24 years ago. So I've been with this company for a long, long time. And what I found myself is I've always been involved with a piece of technology that sort of wants to be a product. And it's just been the natural course of my career. So started off with Xbox and Xbox 360 and designing CPUs that were never designed before, like multi-core devices. And then went on to have there was a point where the whole world was about using accelerometers for gesture control. So we did sort of that for the Xbox too. Then we looked at technologies like Connect, which was looking at cameras and optics and sort of building out a human interaction model, and that just worked really great actually.
Yeah.
And finally, over the last few years, I was involved with HoloLens, bringing that piece of technology to life and making a product out of it. It's incredibly hard for taking techs that are still immature and making them mature and productizing them. So that's what I naturally gravitate towards. And when after HoloLens, when I looked around the company, this particular technology tree was the one I wanted to jump into because it just feels, and you use an example of somebody told me this, it's like birthing a bird. And it looks really uncomfortable and looks painful, but once it's born, it's beautiful. And at some point just gets up and flies. So that's what I enjoy. That's what sort of drives me and brings me to work, and
Yeah.
that's why I gravitate towards the quantum domain, and here we are.
Right. And here we are. Well, so fascinating story. And HoloLens, by the way, what an amazing piece of technology that is, for sure. I want to ask you about Microsoft's approach to quantum and how it differs, say, from other global multinational tech companies. I mean, Microsoft, has a record of certainly consumer and enterprise interaction, but wondering, how it differs, what differentiates the Microsoft vision of quantum, say, from other players.
What turns out is when most companies start on an adventure with a new piece of technology, they are all about their own vertical. And we at Microsoft tend to think different. So not only are we comfortable with our own vertical and we are all in on the technology tree that we think is going to be successful, we love the notion of partnering and building platforms that span across multiple partners. So that is a fundamental difference in our approach. And what that means is we are happy to invest heavily on a first party play, and then are very, very careful and cognizant and thoughtful about how we work with our partners to make sure that they are successful and they are also on our platform. The DNA of the company is about being a platform company. So you see it in Surface. I mean, we have a very vibrant third-party ecosystem of PCs, and we have our own PC. Similarly, in almost all adventures that the company is on, it's always about being a platform first and having our own play as a strong player in that platform. So that's the approach we've taken with Quantum also. We have our own first party play, which is all about topological devices and topological qubits, and we are delighted with the progress that we have there. And we have partners that we are working with very, very closely since many, many, many years, and
Yeah.
helping them be successful and trying to build devices based on their technology. So it should be pretty fascinating how we play this.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that perspective. That very articulate for sure. That's a great perspective. So our viewers, range from startups to executives ensconced in enterprise settings. So I wanted to pick your brain around, key challenges you've gotten in getting support for quantum initiatives at Microsoft. So everyone faces different kind of challenges, but how have you brought ultimately the business value of this technology to sponsors, to executives, to line of business people with a P&L kind of thing?
So look, I'd be, I'd be kidding if I said, the companies have infinite patience and nobody,
Well,
that
that's
is
why I'm
just
asking the question. Like, well, how did you do it? What
no,
can our viewers? Any insight to help viewers be
no,
successful?
no. I think like the point was, even though companies do not have infinite strategic patience, mature companies do think about these things very, very carefully and think about how they're going to invest in nascent technologies that will not contribute to the P&L in a timely fashion. And it's always going to be later than what was anticipated. I mean, that's like really, if there's one truth is going to be, it's going to be later than what was originally envisioned. So at Microsoft, the quantum program has been the longest running program in this company's history. We've been working on quantum for 17 straight years, and it's been funded by our bosses for 17 years. So
Wow.
clearly, there is a lot of passion around this subject, and there's a lot of commitment, because we believe if there is a paradigm shift in computing, it will come from quantum. The world of AI is on us right now, and just like AI took 10 plus years to come to life, there's going to be a point where quantum will be a P&L driver. It is not here yet, but the company is committed behind it. So that makes my job infinitely easier because, I mean, of course, I have to go and justify budgets and our expenses every year, like every other mature company. But there, as long as there's progress and as long as there's a market, continues to be a market need, uh, companies like Microsoft continue to invest in these technology trees. So we are, and that's why it's such a pleasure to be here, where we have the strategic vision and the foresight, even though P&L is not going to be immediately available, that we are able to continue investing in it.
Yeah. No. Thank you for sharing that insight for sure. Let's talk more specifically. So let's talk about the Azure Quantum Compute Platform. I want to get your take on the role that plays in Microsoft's overall quantum strategy.
Yeah, so as I said, then we since we are always about building out the right types of platforms, what we are doing is building out Azure Quantum Compute such that this is a qubit virtualization platform, enables us to work very closely with partner companies and to bring their qubits onto our platform to virtualize them such that to the end user, they don't care what underlying hardware they're working on. And that's what the power of that platform is. It enables us to produce logical qubits. And we are in the domain of logical qubits now. I mean, the world of NISQ is effectively over. So it's all about logical qubits. It's all about putting the right error correction on those qubits. And it's all about figuring out how to co-design the underlying hardware to enable those logical qubits to be as flawless as possibly can be. And that's what Azure Compute Platform does for us. And it's been fantastic. You saw some of the results as of recent. With Continuum, we were able to showcase 12 logical qubits, and recently with Atom, we were able to Atom Computing, which is another startup in Colorado, we were able to showcase 24 logical qubits. And these qubits are not just static or memory qubits; these are qubits that compute. So we
Yeah.
detect errors, we correct errors, and then we compute on them, which is fundamentally different from often people talk about, hey, we have a qubit that you're running some code on, and it's a logical qubit. The question to ask is, does it detect errors, correct errors, and compute? And if it
Yeah.
does, it's a real logical qubit. Otherwise,
That's a great phrase. I'm tempted to like write that down, and I would get your marketing team. Qubits that compute. Duly noted. Just that's IP, by the way, everybody. Now, I want to make sure you don't take Zulfi's idea. So I'm going to talk more about Atom and Continuum, but before we get into that, you're describing logical qubits. So Microsoft is focused on topological, which is one of the many modalities, and I want to get your take on why you settled on this modality, and obviously why it's significant, and what you think the benefit is as opposed to the other qubit modalities that are out there.
the way we think about qubits and these underlying quantum platforms is there's space to innovate for multiple different platforms. So we at Microsoft have looked at spin qubits, we have looked at transmon qubits. We have looked at now with neutral atoms. We're working very closely with them. We've had lots of experience with iron traps. But We do believe that the topological approach is a unique approach that offers a lot of value because these qubits are fast, they are small, and they are naturally prone not to have errors. There's correction that's actually built into the underlying hardware itself.
Hmm.
So this gives this type of qubit a lot of leeway, and probably the most important thing that is often misunderstood or not really called out. These are voltage controlled qubits. So think of it like as a clear on and off pulse, like a voltage pulse, and we can control these qubits
Huh.
based just like you would with a traditional transistor. So it enables a lot of the pre-existing IP that has developed over the last 50 or 60 years on how to control high-speed devices sort of transition into the quantum world. Some of the other approaches that we discussed or that we talked about require each qubit to have an individual microwave finely tuned pulse going
Right.
to it. So the control and the readout of those devices gets a lot more complicated. So that's why when we think about the entire ecosystem and we work with each one of these technology trees will have different advantages. There is a specific advantage with the topological type devices. There's also cost, by the way. These devices are very, very complicated. Machines that are going to be built around them are much more intense and probably more expensive. However, there's a space for them. So think of the world, the way I think of it is like just like CPUs, you had ARM cores and x86 and other types of devices. There's a play for all these technology trees to flourish depending on the application. It's very, very application specific, if that makes.
Yes, no, for sure. So let's drill down into that for a minute. So application specific, can you give examples of settings where the topological approach, you know, will deliver uh, more value than say other? Because
Yeah, no,
that's a powerful statement for sure.
yeah, no, we've been spending a lot of time thinking through. Like we have one of the things that the company has done that is unique, also in addition to being a platform play, is that we've invested a lot of time developing quantum algorithms upfront and thinking through what the application space will look like. The way we have currently sort of zoomed in is in the field of chemistry and material science. This is where quantum machines, that's like the signature app for a quantum machine. Now, it turns out in chemistry, you can do chemistry simulations for small molecules and only look at a sliver of the molecule. The rest of the ecosystem can be computed using a hybrid approach. But for a small section, which we are really for what's called chemistry shadows, you are going to simulate using a quantum machine, and you could do a fantastic simulation of that area using an ion trap machine or a atom machine. Now, as you start looking at more complicated molecules, larger molecules that have a much longer runtime, maybe you want to do the entire molecule and not just a section of it. And there's use cases where the entire molecule has to be simulated. So in that case, a topological machine would be a much better approach.
Hmm.
So it's a trade-off of cost versus compute versus time. And whatever is more appropriate, just like today, for example, we have GPUs in our fleet in Azure. And depending on the workload, the Azure system will help you decide which GPU cluster to use, which is more appropriate for your workload. We will give our users the opportunity of deciding which quantum processor they ought to be using, which is more appropriate for their workload. And
Huh.
and that is sort of the distinction where different machines kind of like make a lot of sense, and you don't need to be hyper focused on a singular vertical.
So I've never really heard anyone articulate that. So thank you. And it makes sense. I mean that, and again, the pattern matching, to the way GPUs are used, depending on workload or speed or desired outcome or whatever, that QPUs will reflect that or imitate that kind of model as well.
That's right.
So great. You mentioned atom computing. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Our viewers are always interested in real world applications. Let's start with the recent announcement that you have a collaboration with Atom to create and entangle 24 logical qubits made from neutral atoms. Can you share more detail about this initiative and how it's going to accelerate? the delivery of reliable.
Absolutely, we're delighted about that partnership with Atom Computing.
Cool.
This is a startup out in Colorado, and what we are doing with them is sort of unique because we start off at the application space and then sort of zoomed into the appropriate error correction. We are actually fundamentally co-designing the hardware with them. So the hardware has been optimized to run the error correction code such a way that we can get the best logical qubits as quickly as possible. We were already able to demonstrate 24, and I think what we have publicly announced at this point is by the in about in about 12 months or so, we'll be launching a machine with them with 50,
Mm,
and this will be ready for customers. So it is a significant step in the direction of productizing quantum machines and making them available for our customers. And we're extremely excited about it because it's truly a co-development with them, which is
yeah,
unique in this space.
very exciting. And again, showing multifaceted approach, which I think is fantastic, right? That so your description of topological qubits applicability in certain settings, and now obviously looking at neutral atoms. Let's talk about Quantinuum. I know there's a recent partnership that was announced with them, and you've demonstrated a hybrid end-to-end chemistry simulation using 12 logical qubits. Can you share some insight into that collaboration?
No, it's the Continuum partnership has also been absolutely fantastic. Continuum is a very mature company. It's out of Honeywell, and so their devices, they have their qubits are actually very high fidelity, and it's a pleasure to work with them. So we were able to demonstrate for the first time an end-to-end a chemistry application, and we were able to essentially run it with 12 logical qubits on their device, which was the first time ever. And it just sort of demonstrates that where the system is going to go. And again, we are all about chemistry for now, which is the signature application. So we are able to showcase for the first time an application running end to end on a quantum device. And as I said earlier, these are going to be hybrid devices. So these devices will have a quantum component to it, a CPU component to it, a GPU component to it, and as the system is running, it's going to run the appropriate calculation on the appropriate underlying hardware. So we were able to demonstrate that,
Hmm.
and we are building that as part of our Azure Quantum Stack, and it should be a role model for how we anticipate future hardware platforms to work with us.
Yeah.
It's been a
So,
great engagement.
so we're talking about sort of chemical, drug development, drug related kinds of computing, but I want to get your take again on based on where you sit, your view across the company, across the industry. What's your take on sort of other verticals that you might be benefiting from this kind of quantum computing environment?
So it's
What's
always
that?
fantastic to lead with the signature app. Now we are not subject matter experts in chemistry, just to make sure that we are all clear. Even though we have invested heavily in figuring out what the right appropriate algorithms are, but as we move forward into different verticals, so for example, in the world of optimization, as of today, classical computing does a fantastic job of optimization, which used to be something that quantum computers were focused on, but classical methods have gotten up and, quite frankly, in our view, accelerated. But the point is to make a platform available for industry experts to work on it themselves and come up with the conclusion that find the ways where the quantum machine has significantly more impact than a classical system. So
Right.
we are partnering with the ecosystem to try to expand beyond the signature app to figure out which other verticals are the right ones. So we started with chemistry, branched onto materials. Pharma would be clearly in the next space where it's interesting. There is a very strong effort in the financial sector to try to figure out where it can add value. We haven't found all the use cases yet, but we are working with the ecosystem to try to develop them. It'll take time.
Yeah.
It's part of the journey that we have all to go to. But let's start with the easy fruit first, where it's so obvious that the advantage is just amazing. And it's sort of interesting when people say chemistry and materials, 96% of all manufactured goods have a need for this space. So
Really.
when I get inspired is when I hear things like, oh my God, build me a house made of, one of the engineers on the team came up with, love to have a house built with transparent aluminum. I mean, if that, I mean, for me, things like that totally. Or there's another example came. Imagine building an airplane that's built out of plastic but lighter than a feather. So these are the type of things that can totally change the game.
Yeah.
And we in the United States, especially in the Midwest, have a manufacturing sector that is sort of primed to be retooled. So it should just open our eyes in terms of what we can do with this, especially as we think about retooling all the Midwest, or sort of be it in the automotive sector, or be it in some of the
Yeah.
other uh,
No.
sectors in
Yeah.
developing
No,
new catalysts for the farming sector. So these are the things that would really change, and really uh, we have an opportunity to write history
yeah.
at this point, I think.
Yeah. Well, and the implication that, learnings and best practices from early wins will then be translatable or extrapolatable out into other settings, right? I think that's the idea on some level, right? Sophie, I wanted you to turn to a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is workforce. Being a nonlinear, multimodal careerist myself, I want to ask your advice about, what you would say to young professionals or young students even interested in pursuing a career in quantum. And the attendant question is, how's Microsoft helping with that?
We work very, very closely with universities, and we have a multitude of different programs where we have been working with university to develop courseworks for quantum. And interestingly, some of the top performers in our quantum team are actually serving professors in, in their various universities. So
Oh,
there's a very deep tie-in already, but we have been really laser focused on trying to build out ecosystems where the universities are producing students that can actually work in the quantum economy, which is going to be a thing in the coming years. So starting on that journey now is sort of the mission that we have been on. And you will see a lot more collaborations kick out as these machines start becoming available in regions. You will start seeing a lot of quote unquote quantum gravity around these machines, where local universities will be producing students that are able to work on algorithms or work on the actual underlying hardware. So there should be a significant story there. And then more importantly, we are just launching and kickstarting the Quantum Ready initiative, which is an initiative, and you'll find more details on this on the Azure Quantum blog, where we are working to not only educate the academic ecosystem, but also the enterprise ecosystem, because there's a lot of sort of transitional learning that has to take place as the world gets ready for a quantum future. And looking forward to partnering with the ecosystem on that and building that ecosystem out.
yeah. Thank you for your continued effort supporting the Quantum Ready Initiative. Can viewers find more about that on the Azure blog or
Yeah, exactly, on the Azure Quantum blog. So
yeah,
that's where that initiative is going to be detailed out.
yeah. So we're coming to the end, and I want to talk about in-person events. I want to get your take on the perspective of in-person settings, conferences, events. Where, as we were saying before, we've spent 3 years looking at Triscuit-sized videos of people's faces on our computer screens, and now that, thank goodness, the pandemic is mostly past us, delighted to be able to get together in person. I always say, you might meet someone that will help drive your business model at one of these events. What's your take on the value now of getting together in person?
Like within the team, I have this joke, but the joke is you can't build a quantum machine from home. so, so,
Oh, another
so,
great, right? I got to write that.
so, so, just like your commentary earlier, look, these forums where humans are a social being, and we need to sort of see each other and work together with each other, and be in the same room with each other for the best ideas to flow. And that's where I think when we talk about these conferences, they're so powerful, because it gets us an opportunity to get together with appropriate colleagues. It's a very small ecosystem still, with appropriate colleagues from various different companies, and essentially share ideas on how to further the ecosystem. And the other interesting thing, like I love the way one of my colleagues on my team said, in our ecosystem we are taking bets on humans and teams. Again, nobody's it is such a powerful statement to make, that it is about the humans in this domain, because there are very few of them. And the more they're able to collaborate even across companies the right way, the more likely we are to be super successful. And that's where these initiatives of bringing these conferences together are so powerful. Now, I would like to add that we should make sure that these conferences, as we continue to develop them, are meaningful. You also run the risk of having many small conferences where you get very sparse attendance. So having the type of conferences which are meaningful, where a lot of people sort of gravitate towards, ultimately is going to be very necessary and very powerful. So we are all in on those, and we hope that we can continue to partner with the various entities that sort of pull these together.
Great. Well, Zulfi, I want to thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been great chatting with you. Thanks for sharing your insight and perspective on the great work that Microsoft is doing in the quantum ecosystem. So, my
Th-
pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
I want to invite our viewers to follow Zulfi on LinkedIn and to check out the Azure Quantum blog to stay informed of Microsoft's latest innovative applications of quantum technologies. I encourage you also to please share this podcast on your social channels to increase the impact of my conversation with Zulfi. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Qubit Confidential. Please follow quantum.tech on X, formerly Twitter, and on LinkedIn. I want to invite you all to join us for Quantum Tech USA on April 14th through 16th. Thanks to all of you for watching, and I'll see you at our next session.